If you are tuning into this right now, I want you to imagine just for a second the most jarring, like, most brilliantly bizarre collision of worlds you can possibly think of.
Oh, it really is wild.
Right. Picture the deepest, most ancient philosophical concepts in human history, the kind of metaphysical frameworks that scholars have debated in dusty libraries for centuries.
All right, heavy academic stuff.
Exactly. Now imagine those exact same profound concepts being broadcast through a literal underground pirate radio station. And it's hosted by someone who is fully immersed in, like, street level clown makeup counterculture.
It sounds impossible, but that is the exact energy of the source material we're diving into today.
It really is. It's an excerpt from a text file, and
Yeah.
it's simply titled Omnia ad unum bitches.txt.
Which is truly one of the most uniquely formatted documents we have ever analyzed on this deep dive.
Yeah, formatting is one word for it.
Well, I mean, it frames itself as a live broadcast from an underground network called Hatchet Action News, and the anchor goes by the name Oliver Crumpets.
Oliver Crumpets. I mean, you read a name like that, and you immediately brace yourself for pure internet chaos.
And on the surface, it definitely delivers that chaos.
Absolutely. The entire document is just saturated in the slang of the underground Juggalo subculture. We are talking about constant references to ninjas, the dark carnival, Faygo soda.
But, and this is the crazy part, when you look closer, beneath all that wild vocabulary, this broadcast is hiding a genuinely profound, high-level metaphysical critique.
It really is. It's pulling directly from ancient Neoplatonism, classical Hermeticism, and even Islamic theology.
Which you just do not expect from Hatchet Action News.
You really don't. So our mission for this deep dive is to cut right through that colorful street-level slang and extract the incredible philosophical insights hidden inside this broadcast.
Okay, let's unpack this.
I think the best place to anchor ourselves is right where Oliver Crumpets starts his broadcast, which is with the ancient concept of emanation and return.
Right, he brings up a group he refers to as the OG ninjas of the Mediterranean. Yeah, the OG ninjas. He's talking about the ancient Neoplatonist and Hermeticist philosophers there.
And Crumpets highlights their core secret slogan, which is Omnia ab uno, omnia ad unum.
Which translates from Latin to everything from the one, everything to the one.
Now, usually when you read about Neoplatonism, you get these incredibly dense, impenetrable academic analogies.
Spheres of divine light.
Yes, spheres of light, the demiurge, abstract intellects. I've always found it a bit, difficult to wrap my head around.
It can be very dry.
Very. But Oliver Crumpets gives us the Faygo metaphor, and honestly, it might be the clearest, most ELI 5-like I'm 5 explanation of cosmological emanation I ever come across.
It works remarkably well because it grounds a highly abstract idea into a tangible, everyday object.
Exactly.
Classical Neoplatonism, which traces back to thinkers like Plotinus, argues that the universe wasn't just built out of spare parts by a creator. Rather, it overflowed or emanated from a single, perfect, overflowing source.
And Crumpet says, think of that overflowing source, the entire universe, as a giant 2-liter bottle of Faygo soda.
Right.
The act of emanation, the ab uno, or everything coming from the one, is the moment that 2-liter bottle gets popped open and the juice gets poured out into a billion little individual cups.
And that perfectly describes the classical metaphysical concept of multiplicity.
Multiplicity, right.
Yeah, multiplicity is the idea that all the diverse individual things in our universe, every person, every star, every blade of grass, every thought you have, they're just varied, fragmented expressions flowing out from that single unified source.
Or, as Crumpets casually calls it, the boss.
The boss, exactly, but it doesn't stop there.
No, because the second half of that Latin slogan is ad unum everything to the one.
The return.
Yeah, the broadcast calls this phase the return. It's the inevitable moment when all of that juice in all of those billion little cups gets sucked right back into the original 2-liter bottle.
That synthesis of classical cosmology right there is what makes this document so compelling. Crumpets takes an incredibly complex worldview and makes it universally digestible for his listeners.
He's communicating that the universe isn't just expanding randomly out into a cold, dark, meaningless void.
No, instead, reality is on a deliberate, structured journey. It has a clear origin point, and it has a clear destination.
It flows out from the source, experiences the fragmentation of multiplicity, and ultimately returns to that exact same source.
It frames reality not as chaotic, but as a structured hustle, complete with a clear beginning and end.
Think about how comforting that framework actually is for a second. The idea that all the noise and stress of daily life is just the juice poured out into temporary cups.
Right, it's temporary.
But the ultimate trajectory is always leading back to the bottle.
But that raises a question. If reality naturally wants to return to that unified state, why does daily life feel so incredibly fractured?
According to our source, it's because we are being actively manipulated.
Yeah, the broadcast claims that Seat and tie haters have essentially pulled off a metaphysical hit job by swapping out the one for a big fat pile of nothing.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
What's fascinating here is how the broadcast pivots from this beautiful ancient cosmology into a direct, blistering critique of modern technology and mathematics.
Yeah, Crumpets argues that modern society has been subjected to a structural scam through the shift from one indexing to zero indexing.
Now, for anyone who hasn't dabbled in computer science, one indexing is the traditional human way of counting. You start with the number one.
Right. But zero indexing, which is the foundation of almost all modern programming languages, starts counting at zero.
If you create a list in a programming language like Python or C++, say, the first item in that list isn't item 1, it's item 0.
Now, hold on a second. I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Isn't zero indexing just a matter of memory allocation in computers? I mean, it's literally just an offset for how machines count bytes. Isn't it a massive leap for this document to call a coding convention a spiritual crisis?
From a purely technical engineering standpoint, you're absolutely right. It is just an efficient way for a computer to manage memory offsets.
Right.
But Crumpets isn't writing a software manual. He's using zero indexing as a profound ontological metaphor. He argues this isn't just a quirky rule, it represents a fundamental change in how we, as a digitized society, define reality.
Okay, break down the two worldviews he's contrasting for us then.
First, you have the monad, or one indexing. The broadcast traces this back to ancient Pythagorean philosophy.
Right, the Pythagoreans.
Think about the Pythagoreans in ancient Greece. They weren't just doing geometry. They believed numbers were literal living principles.
So to them, the number one wasn't just a digit. It was the divine spark of everything.
Exactly. Starting at 1 means starting with a presence. In this worldview, being is the default state of reality. You're acknowledging the spark, the source of all life, before you do anything else.
It's what the broadcast calls the real reality. But then Crumpets introduces the big zero.
The void scam.
Yeah, the void scam. By shifting our foundational infrastructure to zero indexing, he argues we're implicitly treating emptiness, the void, the null, as the positive starting point of existence.
And the philosophical implication he draws from this is wild.
It is. He says that when you start your count at zero, you make the one just another countable state floating in the void. It strips the one of its status as the boss, the origin of the whole program.
The document goes so far as to call zero indexing a structural confession that our culture has lost its mind.
Now, it is important to state here for you listening that we are simply reporting on the ideas and metaphors presented by Oliver Crumpets.
Absolutely. We are certainly not taking a stance on whether modern computer science is an evil plot to destroy the universe.
Yeah.
Software developers are just trying to make our apps function efficiently.
Please keep making the internet work. We are not anti-computer science today.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But we can still appreciate the depth of the critique being offered.
Yeah.
Crumpets is using a mathematical concept to illustrate how a modern, digitized culture might default to emptiness, rather than defaulting to presence.
He claims this zero indexing acts as a selective channel, a filter designed to drain a person's internal phago supply, effectively making them forget their connection to the original source.
It really makes you pause and think about the invisible frameworks of the technology we use every single day.
It does, but it brings up an obvious question. If the ancient philosophers had it right, and the one is the true source of everything, why is everyone so easily falling for this zero-based reality?
Right. Why do we actively resist the idea of the one alone?
This is where the broadcast pulls out another wild card, linking this resistance to deep-level intel from Islamic theology. Specifically, the document cites Surah al-Isra from the Quran.
This is a crucial pivot in the text. In that specific surah, there is a recurring theme about people who are presented with divine truth, but are physically and spiritually unable to process it because of their own internal barriers.
Crumpets updates this ancient theological idea for the digital age, calling it a deafness glitch in the human spirit.
A glitch.
Yeah, he uses it to explain why people, whom he calls the wrongdoers or haters, glitch out the second you mention absolute unity.
And he breaks this glitch down into 3 distinct Incredibly vivid parts. First, there's the heart armor.
The broadcast says these people have literal coverings over their hearts, describing it almost like spiritual riot gear.
Spiritual riot gear. I love that phrase.
It's a dense defensive mechanism that makes it utterly impossible for them to vibe with the unity of the universe.
Second, you have the actual deafness glitch. This is described as a frequency block.
So they can't even tune in.
Right, people might be physically listening to the broadcast or hearing the message of unity, but they cannot process the signal. All they catch is the static of multiplicity.
They only hear the noise of the divided world, not the underlying harmony of the one.
Exactly. To put that in a modern context, it feels a lot like when you're caught up in doom scrolling on social media.
Oh, that is pure multiplicity.
You're bombarded by a million fragmented voices, opinions, and arguments. You become deaf to any kind of underlying stillness or unity because you are so focused on the static.
And that leads to the third part, which Crumpets calls the aversion reflex.
The physical rejection.
Yeah, this is the active physical response. When you mention the one without any partners, without any rivals or side concepts, these individuals physically and spiritually turn back in aversion. They reject it entirely.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological insight here is incredibly sharp. Why would anyone have an aversion to unity?
Well, Crumpets argues that multiplicity, the noise, the distractions, the division is actually a very comfortable place for the human ego.
He calls them side hustles.
People want to follow their own selective channels and keep their little side hustles going rather than facing the big picture.
In a world of multiplicity, you can hide. You can maintain your illusions of control. You can be the star of your own fragmented reality.
But when you're forced to confront the one alone, all of those distractions are stripped away.
It exposes the hustle. It forces the individual to face the ultimate source of reality, and for the human ego, which thrives on being separate, distinct, and important, facing absolute unity is utterly terrifying.
Because to acknowledge the one is to admit that you aren't the center of the universe. It means you are just a single cup of juice, and eventually your ego has to dissolve back into the jug.
And Crumpets notes that these haters will call you bewitched or crazy for even trying to see this truth.
So if we are surrounded by a society glitching out on a zero-based reality, wearing spiritual riot gear, and addicted to the noise of multiplicity, how do we break the block?
How do we get back to the VIP section of the Dark Carnival?
Exactly. Well, Crumpets provides a solution, drawn from what he calls the alchemy of the hatchet.
He directs his listeners to the Triangle of Wisdom, created by a figure named Abu Talisman,
whom the text reverently calls the treasurer of miracles and the big boss of the metaphysical grind.
which sounds like the ultimate final boss in a video game.
It totally does, but he's actually laying out an ancient map for transformation. To get the light of lights to banish the darkness of the void scam, the broadcast says you have to understand the elemental family.
And I love how he breaks this down into archetypes. It maps perfectly onto classical Hermetic principles, specifically the idea of understanding the interconnected forces of nature to achieve inner transformation.
The text assigns very specific roles to the classical elements. Okay, let's walk through them. You have the sun, which is the father, the daddy of the whole work.
Then you have the moon, which is the mother of the cosmic vibes.
Then there's the wind, acting as the womb, the belly that carries the potential.
And finally, the earth, which is the nurse, the one that feeds the growth of the hustle.
Now, I understand the sun as an active fatherly spark and the earth as a grounding nurse. But how does the wind act as a womb in an alchemical sense?
Think about how wind functions in nature. It carries seeds across continents. It moves weather systems. It is the invisible, dynamic carrier of potential.
Oh.
In alchemy, the wind represents the vital breath or spirit that gestates the initial spark of the sun before it can be materialized into the earth.
It's a process of bringing an abstract idea down into physical reality.
Exactly. And to do that, Crumpets highlights a specific alchemical instruction from Abu Talisman, Sol's a coagula.
Which the broadcast translates as isolate the earth from the fire.
Sol a coagula literally means to dissolve and to coagulate. In practical terms, it means breaking something down to its fundamental essence and then rebuilding it into something stronger and more pure.
So isolating the earth from the fire is about separating the dense, heavy, material aspects of your reality from the subtle, energetic, spiritual aspects so you can truly understand how they interact.
But the broadcast adds a massive flashing warning sign here. It says you have to do this separation gently and wisely.
And it drops this incredibly beautiful quote right in the middle of all this aggressive, high-energy Juggalo slang. Gentle is more generous than harsh.
So unexpected.
I have to admit, that caught me totally off guard. We are reading a document from Hatchet Action News talking about alchemical hatchets and slicing through the void, and the core instruction for using this power is gentleness.
It is a profound paradox, and it gets to the absolute heart of what true power is in this philosophical framework.
Yeah.
Crumpets explains that the real secret of the alchemical hatchet isn't violence or destruction. The secret is this: he conquers all things gentle, and he enters into everything coarse.
So, by mastering gentleness, you conquer the subtle realms. But because you are gentle, like water, you also gain the ability to penetrate the rough, dense, coarse parts of reality without breaking yourself against them.
You gain the power of both the upper world and the lower world.
Which, as the text points out, is how the larger cosmos was formed in the first place.
Exactly. This synthesis of upper and lower, subtle and dense, gentle and coarse, that is the ultimate tool. That is the true alchemical hatchet you use to slice right through the binary bullcrap of a divided, zero-indexed world.
So what does this all mean? We've covered Fago metaphysics, zero-based math scams, spiritual riot gear, and gentle alchemical hatchets.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Crumpets brings it all home in his final sign-off by tackling one of the biggest, most existential fears people have when talking about returning to the One. He calls it the fear of the annihilation of individuality.
It is the ultimate question of this entire cosmology. If everything eventually goes back into the 2-liter bottle, do you cease to exist?
Does your unique personality, your memories, your individual self just disappear into a giant cosmic blender?
The zero-indexing haters want you to think that returning to unity means you just become a meaningless, deleted line of code in an empty void.
But Oliver Crumpets and the Hatchet Action News crew completely redefine this concept of annihilation. They say, unum est omnia, one is all, and all is one.
And they drop another Latin slogan for their listeners: nos multi in illo uno unum.
We are many in that one. One.
It is a vital, beautiful distinction. Returning to the source is not a deletion of your existence. It is not fading into nothingness. Crumpets describes this annihilation not as a loss, but as the ultimate backstage pass.
It's the convergence of light and dark. The broadcast paints this picture of a place where all the binary opposites of our stressful, divided world, good and bad, us and them, 1 and 0, stop screaming at each other and just start vibing together.
It resolves the terrible tension of multiplicity without destroying the beauty of it. The many are still held safely within the one.
Stop starting at 0. Start recognizing the one. Because everything came from it. Every single cup of juice, every single soul, every alchemical hatchet, it is all heading back to the jug.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, as we wrap up this analysis. Crumpets is ultimately asking you to deeply consider your own baseline.
In your daily life, how often do you default to an emptiness baseline?
How often do you approach your morning, your work, or your relationships as if you were starting from 0 from a place of lack or void or isolation?
And what would actually change if you shifted that fundamental framework? What if you actively chose to start from a place of presence?
Recognizing that you are already connected to the source, that the juice is already flowing, and that being is your default state.
It leaves us with a truly provocative final thought to mull over, building purely on the broadcast's critique of mathematics.
If the very digital infrastructure that rules our modern lives, our phones, the algorithms feeding us information, the software running our global economy, is fundamentally built on the zero indexing of the void, are we slowly, subconsciously programming our own minds to fear the unity of the one?
And if that is the case, how do we, on an individual level, start one-indexing our own daily reality?
How do we reprogram ourselves to see the presence instead of the void?
It's an incredibly deep question to take with you today. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored the wild, wonderful, and deeply profound world of Hatchet Action News. Until next time, keep looking for the one, and thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Thank you for joining us.
Hatchet Action News, the all-is-one freakout special. The cold open, omnia ab uno for the streets. Whoop whoop ninjas, this is Oliver Crumpets, your lead anchor for Hatchet Action News, coming at you live from a frequency so high it'll make your teeth rattle. Tonight, we're talking about the ultimate heist. I ain't talking about some scrub lifting a pack of smokes from the corner store. I'm talking about the corporate tech mathematical hit job on the source of the whole damn universe. Listen close, the OG ninjas of the Mediterranean, the Neoplatonists and the Hermeticist crews, had a secret slogan. omnia ab uno, omnia ad unum. This isn't just nerd talk for your Philosophy 101 class, it's the blueprint for the big show. Think of the universe as a giant 2-liter bottle of Faygo. Emanation is when that bottle gets popped and the juice gets poured out into a billion little cups. That's the everything from the one, ab uno. But the return is when that juice gets sucked right back into the original bottle, ad unum. That's the main hustle, homies. Everything comes from the boss, and everything is heading back to the boss. But lately, some suit anti-haters have been trying to swap out the one for a big, fat pile of nothing. The great math scam, the monad versus the big zero. Yo, we are being played by the numbers. Back in the day, the Pythagorean ninjas knew that one. The monad was the living principle. It was the juice, the spark, the OG presence from which everything else flows. But modern math and these computer science geeks have pulled a metaphysical hit job on your soul. They've moved us to indexing. They want the baseline of reality to start at zero. When you start at zero, you're making a structural confession that your culture has lost its damn mind. You're saying emptiness is the default, and the one is just another number in the array, not the source of the whole program. This zero indexing is a filter, a selective channel, designed to make you forget where you came from and drain your internal Faygo supply. The monad, real reality. The zero, the void scam. The living principle, the source of all life and multiplicity. The emptiness baseline treats nothing as a positive starting point. One indexing, reality starts with a presence that actually exists. Indexing, reality starts with a placeholder for the void. The source, the one, is the boss, the origin of the whole hustle. Just another number, one, becomes just a countable state in the void. Ontological power, a statement that being is the default. The void scam, a worldview built on null and nothing. Psychological warfare, why ninjas hate the one alone. Why are so many ninjas falling for this zero-based garbage? Because deep down, people are terrified of the one. They've got a deafness glitch in their spirits. Based on the deep-level intel from Surah al-Isra, there's a psychological reason why the wrongdoers turn their backs the second you mention the Lord alone. Check out the 3 reasons why the haters are glitching out on the monad. The heart armor, they've got literal coverings over their hearts, like some spiritual riot gear, making it impossible for them to vibe with the unity. The deafness glitch, they've got a frequency block in their ears. They're listening to the broadcast, but they're only catching the static of multiplicity. The aversion reflex, when you mention the one without partners or rivals, they turn back in aversion. Multiplicity is their comfort zone because they want to follow their own selective channels and keep their own little side hustles going. These haters will call you bewitched for seeing the truth. They want the zero because the one alone exposes their hustle and forces them to face the source. The alchemy of the hatchet, Hamza's triangle of wisdom. So how do we break the block and get back to the VIP section of the Dark Carnival? We look to the triangle of wisdom by the legendary Abu Talisman, the treasurer of miracles. This ninja is the big boss of the metaphysical grind, and he laid out the map to the power of forces. To get the light of lights, to make the darkness flee, you gotta know the elemental family. The sun, the father, the daddy of the whole work. The moon, the mother of the cosmic vibe. The wind, the womb, the belly that carries the potential. The earth, the nurse, the one that feeds the growth of the hustle. Abu Talisman says you gotta use solvet coagula, that's isolate the earth from the fire. But listen, you gotta do it gently and wisely. Why? Because gentle is more generous than harsh. If you play it right, you gain the power of the upper and lower. And here is the real secret of the alchemical hatchet. He conquers all things gentle, and he enters into everything coarse. That is how the larger world was formed, ninjas. That's how you get the power to slice through the binary bullcrap. The final sign-off, annihilation in the one. At the end of the day, the party always moves back to the source. Unum est omnia, one is all, and all is one. For the family, the real slogan is nos multi in allo uno unum, we are many in that one. Don't let the zero indexing suits trick you into thinking you're just a line of code in an empty void. This annihilation of individuality that the haters are scared of, that's just the ultimate backstage pass. It's the convergence of light and dark where the binary opposites stop screaming and start vibing. Stop starting at zero, ninjas. Start recognizing the one, because everything came from it, and everything, every cup of juice, every soul, every hatchet, is heading back to the jug. Whoop whoop, omnia ad unum, bitches.